Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. In this episode, we're going to take a look at Psalm 23. As I record this, we're still practicing social distancing and quarantining due to the coronavirus. A lot of people are anxious and fearful and concerned about how things are going to end up, and rightly so, I should say. Well, Psalm 23 is a passage in the Bible that seems to be built for moments just like these, and a lot of people are turning to it for comfort. But as a pastor, I don't want people to only be comforted by the beautiful words in the psalm, because I think it's actually possible to go beyond comfort and actually begin to experience the truth that this psalm contains. In other words, I think it's possible to become a Psalm 23 kind of person. And I'd like to take some time and show you how. So here's how Psalm 23 begins. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. So let me stop right there because we could spend a whole lot of time on this part alone. This small portion says so much about God, and it makes some pretty crazy claims about what our life with God could look like. And I believe that if we can just understand the introduction, then you can proceed to understand the rest of the psalm in a way that will help all of this psalm become a reality for you. So let's get started. And as I load my graphics, which I should warn you are very basic. I mean, very basic. Lower your expectations right now. But as you do that, begin thinking about how God is described. God is so good. It says he's like a shepherd that takes care of his sheep to the extent that they never lack anything. Now, here's where the learning opportunity presents itself. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Now, what do you picture in your mind when you hear the phrase green pastures? Now, I have to credit Ray Vanderland's ministry for helping me see this, but here's what most people think of when they hear the phrase green pastures. So, this is what most Westerners picture when they read the words, He makes me lie down in green pastures. If you don't believe me, Google Psalm 23 green pastures and watch how your screen explodes with different shades of green. Now, at the very outset, let me say to you that this is not what green pastures looked like in the region Psalm 23 was written. But let's take a moment and consider some of the implications of thinking and believing that this is what the psalmist had in mind. What would you be thinking as you settle down here if you're one of these sheep? I'd imagine that you'd be contented, thankful, happy, comfortable, all good things, right? On the surface, it looks like an image of abundance, but it's really not. What it really is a picture of excess, and there's a big difference between excess and abundance. Because abundance is when you have what you need to complete a job or task and do it well, while excess is having so much that the remaining portion becomes a burden to you. For example, imagine it takes you 3/4 of a tank of gas to get home, but you get a full tank of gas. Your gas tank is now filled abundantly because you have enough to get you home and some more in case something happens. But if you began filling up every spare container you can find with gas and shoving it into your car, you're now in the realms of excess. It's become a burden to you. Well, what you see in this picture is excess. Abundance makes one thankful for what one has, but excess makes one fearful that they might not have enough. And what would eventually happen is that the sheep in this situation would begin to place their confidence not in the shepherd, but in the grass. They would drift from the shepherd. They would look around and think, there's enough for me. There's so much. And their confidence would shift away from the person who led them there. Unfortunately, this is one of the major effects of the Western understanding of green pastures. It paints a picture of a God who pampers us so excessively to the point that we wouldn't really need or want him anymore. It makes life with God become more about what God gives than who God is. And this, in the long run, will make life miserable. Now, here's another picture. This is a real picture of what Judean shepherds would refer to as green pastures. In fact, if you look closely, you can see some sheep in the background here and their shepherd right out there in front of them. This is what the author of Psalm 23 would have been thinking about when he wrote the words, "He makes me lie down in green pastures." But it doesn't look very green, does it? The reason they call these green pastures is because that region of the world doesn't have rolling fields of grass like we do here in the West. So the shepherds have to find hillsides where small amounts of grass grow every single day. Then they lead their sheep there so that they can get their fill. Now, let me ask you the same question as we did in the earlier scene. What would you be thinking if you were one of these sheep and you settled down here? Well, you probably wouldn't be thinking about a Thanksgiving Day spread, but you'd still be content and you'd still be thankful, but it'd be a different feel than the one we had in the first scene, wouldn't it? Because in the first scene, we were lulled into a false sense of confidence that we had enough to last forever. Therefore, our sense of peace and satisfaction came not from the provider, but from the provision. But here, we have enough for the day, because after we've eaten the grass, it's gone. Therefore, what does this image of green pastures highlight as most important? The shepherd. It's all about the shepherd. This scene tells us that our confidence must remain in the shepherd. We must believe that he will continue providing and leading us to the places where we need to be. So while scene 1 seems more inviting at first, in the long run it leaves us with a stagnated faith in God. Scene 2, on the other hand, seems less inviting at first, but in the long run it develops a strong confidence in God. And that's really what Psalm 23 is about. It's not really about the green pastures, the still waters, or even the valley of the shadow of death. It's all about the goodness and trustworthiness of the Good Shepherd. So whether scene 1 or scene 2 happens to be your lot in life, the best part of the picture will always be the shepherd. And as we realize that and live it out, the whole of Psalm 23 can become a reality for each and every one of us. Well, I hope you're wondering how you can begin living a Psalm 23 kind of life. Well, the way to start is actually pretty easy. All you need to do is find a good shepherd or a good guide to lead you through your life. Now, of course, in a moment, I'm going to advocate for Jesus, but he's not the only one offering to be a shepherd or a guide. There are many people out there who are offering to help you live well. A lot of them, in fact, are on YouTube. They say in not so many words, if you follow me, I'll show you how to do this or do that. And to be honest, many of them probably can deliver on what they promise. But my question for you is this: how many of them, living or dead, have lived the kind of life that Psalm 23 describes? I'd venture to say that even the best of them didn't even come close. There's only one person whose life perfectly illustrates what Psalm 23 describes. That is Jesus Christ. When he was on earth, his Father was his good shepherd, and Jesus followed him so closely, trusted him so perfectly, and obeyed him so completely. And as a result of this relationship between he and his Father, we see how the Father took care of his Son. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jesus was crucified. Where was the shepherd then? Well, that's a good question. But first of all, look at Jesus' disposition as he was going to be crucified. He was totally at peace. He entrusted himself into the plans of his Father, believing that his Father was leading him to a place that would end up being ultimately good for him, even if he had to go through the valley of the shadow of death to get there. He knew he was going with his Father. And now look at him. He dwells in the house of his Father forever. But what's even better than that is because he entrusted himself to his Father, he now can be your shepherd. He can send his Spirit, the very same Spirit that enabled him to trust his Father completely, to live with your spirit, enabling you to trust in him the same way he trusted his Father. And as you do that, he can help you lead a Psalm 23 kind of life. As I said at the start of this video, it's possible for this psalm to be more than just a source of comfort. It can actually become a reality for you. But in order for that to happen, You'll need to be intentional about following the Good Shepherd, Jesus Christ, through your days. Or as Dallas Willard said, you must arrange your days so that you're experiencing deep contentment, joy, and confidence in your everyday life with God. If you're interested in learning more about how to do that and starting to live a Psalm 23 kind of life, check out the link to an article I wrote. It's posted in the description section. And I'd love to hear your comments about your experience with Psalm 23. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy during these interesting times. The next passage we're going to be looking at is Psalm 91. So I'd encourage you to look at it before we meet together through YouTube. And if you'd like to be made aware of when that episode will drop, hit the subscribe button so that you can get a notification on your phone or however you view. Until then, peace and goodness. Have a nice day. Blessings.